we all have bad days, but we also know what a really good day feels like. And if you can have more good days than bad days, if you can get a lot done, so like I view work as a sprint. Like go, 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 get as much done as you can. Don't waste your time on stupid things. Be efficient. And if you're able to do that, you can get 80 hours of work done in 40 hours. There's no question about that. So a lot of people just aren't efficient, whether it's they're not organized or they have no relationship to technology. And so they go, oh, I'm so burned out. Well, it's your own damn fault because you're not efficient. You waste time. You screw around on your email too much. You don't have an organized to-do list. You don't prioritize things. You don't keep an efficient calendar. You don't say no to things. You say yes to everything. So you did this to yourself. So it's not that being an entrepreneur isn't for you or it's too hard for you or you don't have time. It's just that it's all on you to do that. But you have to create all that for yourself because no one else will.
Welcome to the Entrepreneur Tell-All podcast, where aspiring entrepreneurs come to hear the inspirational and motivational stories of those who've come before them. I'm your host, James Makuto. Welcome to the show. Today's guest is Tom Healy, who is the co-founder of Mentumm, an Arizona-based company that offers and provides professional training and executive leadership coaching to business managers across a wide array of organizations and industries. Throughout his own entrepreneurial journey, Tom has co-founded and founded 3 successful companies, published 5 books, developed online education that's currently being used at over 100 college campuses, delivered over 1,000 presentations and hundreds of organizations, and helped hundreds of organizations execute faster and more effectively. Welcome to the show, Tom.
Thank you for having me, and I will say I'm very jealous of the tone of your voice is made for podcasts. It's just soothing, it's informative, it's comfortable. I hate the sound of my own voice, but I love listening to you.
Listen, Tom, before I got involved with this, I was that person who hated being on camera, hated the way his voice sounded. So for me, this whole endeavor is really me, sort of embracing those fears and trying to overcome them. So I appreciate the kind words. Thank you.
Well, and I think if you're the type of person that really enjoys listening to the sound of your voice and watching yourself speak, then maybe there's something that's a little flawed in your character, because I think or you have a little too much self-confidence, right? I think we should all feel, I mean, for those of us that have gotten on stage and speak, it is like the most uncomfortable thing to watch ourselves. I mean,
Absolutely.
It's tough because you want to learn and you want to get better, but I find that it's a little better to just have someone in the room that can give you feedback than trying to watch it yourself. It's horribly uncomfortable.
I appreciate the kind words, sir. Thank you. So as we get started here, prior to everything that you've been able to accomplish in adulthood, like I mentioned, the 3 successful businesses, thousands of speaking engagements, book publishing, you actually started a business in your teenage years. Could you perhaps walk me through the why, what, and how of your entrepreneurship origin story, please?
I love the question, and before I answer it, I will tell you that I think that's one of the best questions you can ask a entrepreneur, because I think there's a lot of value in the answer. But I also find that if you're considering investing in a company or you're considering working for a company, ask the entrepreneur, ask the founder about their origin story, because I think it'll reveal more about who they are and how they're hardwired than almost any other question, or even just asking that question. So really appreciate the question. I love when people answer it. I love learning from people.
I think it definitely sets a great contextual table, right? So in terms of whatever's to follow in terms of the conversation. So
absolutely. So I'll share mine with you, and I will start by saying it is completely illegal, but enough time has passed that I think I'm okay sharing it. So, and this is, and this, by the way, how old are you?
Ooh, dating myself. 43.
Okay, so you'll understand this. I turned 39 yesterday. So
okay.
Happy birthday. We're the same. Thank you. We're the same age. You'll understand this. Maybe some people listening to this won't, but that's okay. You'll know what I'm talking about to a certain degree. So, growing up, I recorded every episode of Saved by the Bell on VHS tape.
Yes.
I then removed all of the commercials because
Hmm.
they aired on television and there were commercials during the episodes. And I put them in order so that I had a chronological order on VHS tape of every Saved by the Bell episode. And there were, I think there were under 100. So there were only, 5 seasons plus some specials, some stuff like that. But I had them all. And those tapes I would sell, I would make copies of them one at a time using a double VCR,
Hmm.
and I would sell them on eBay. So it was every Saved by the Bell episode in order, no commercials, and I would sell the box set for the better part of $100 each.
Oh, wow.
And it was a great business because the only expense I had was the VHS tapes, but my grandfather, when they were on sale, would buy a bunch of them and give them to me. And then my mom would pay the shipping when she would ship out the tapes to whoever won them on eBay. So I had virtually no overhead. It was
Hmm.
pure profit. And I did this over and over again for a few years. And I finally got a letter from the studio saying, please don't do this anymore. And it really wasn't even that bad of a letter. It was just like, don't do this. So I stopped doing it. But that was it. But I mean, you think about what I learned. I mean, it was interacting with the buyers, it was collecting the money, it was posting, it was, there was a lot of great stuff in there. But yeah, the early days of eBay, I sold that. And so I learned a lot, and that was the beginning of the entrepreneurial spirit. And the other thing that I had going for me too was, and I did not have a close relationship with my father, but I
Hmm.
had two adult men that were mentors to me that both owned their own business. So I determined, as a teenager, that I was going to be an entrepreneur. I
Okay.
never considered doing anything else. I never, had any other thought, but it was kind of hardwired into me that, hey, they both have money, they get to work for themselves, they have freedom and flexibility, they get to attend their kids' sporting events. I want to do what they do. And so
Sure.
I just always gravitated towards that entrepreneurial lifestyle. And be careful what you wish for, because there was a lot of tough stuff they were going through that I wasn't aware of in my teenage years that I now get to experience as an entrepreneur. But yeah, it was that's what shaped me, and I'd say that's my origin story.
Awesome. How old were you?
I would have been probably like 13 to 15,
Oh,
somewhere in
wow.
that range. So I was
Okay.
pretty young, end of middle school, beginning of high school.
Yeah, I remember we used to do that with cassette tapes, like audio tapes, but we would only, I mean, it wasn't for, we weren't selling them. It was more just to share music with friends in
Yeah.
high school. And it was the boom boxes with the double cassette tapes. And it was, it was a fun thing to do. But it was also just, that's how things went, how music went viral back in the day for us, right? We used to just dub them and share them with friends, right? So
Oh, and
somebody
then and we had a guy that would, he was burning CDs. So he
Mhm.
would sell you whatever, 15, $20. He'd sell you a CD that was, either just a copy of one, or he'd make you a mix and download songs and charge more for that.
Yeah.
Great business.
Yeah, I think we're good. I think the statute of limitations on that
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
has passed. So I think we're fine on that. Okay, great. So you know, going back to what you said about the time you had that aha moment that you wanted to become an entrepreneur, would you say that there are any similarities or differences in what it meant to you to be an entrepreneur back then versus what it means to you today?
I viewed entrepreneurship back then pretty much the same way I do now, which
Okay.
is you if you do things right, you stay in business, you grow the business, you create a product or service that people will continue to pay for. I mean, if you do this entrepreneurship thing right, and there's a lot of stuff that has to happen, you earn something, and what you earn is you earn the ability to do what you want, when you want, and
Hmm.
with who you want.
Right.
So I don't think that that's changed at all. I very much view that, but I view it as a trade off. And I think that that's where a lot of people get lost is they go, well, I want that. I want to sit in Starbucks by myself with my headphones in and work all day.
Yeah,
and not have people bother me and not have an annoying boss and not be told where to be, when to be. And those are all incredible things to have, but they're things that you have to earn.
absolutely.
Now, not only do you have to earn them, but you have to keep them. And I was asked a number of years ago by a college student, and I feel like my best answers typically come when I don't know what the question's going to be and I just throw out an answer. But he asked me, he said, what's your key to success?
Hmm.
Like how have you been able to, stay in business and be successful? And I told him, I said, I'm paranoid. Now, I'm not so paranoid that I wake up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat, but I'm paranoid that just because something is working now does not mean it's going to be in the future. And I
Sure.
think there's a lot of entrepreneurs out there that become very entitled and they say, oh, well, I had a client that paid me $50,000 to do this project.
Hmm.
So that's going to continue forever. I'm going to continue to get new clients. They're going to continue to pay me $50,000 to do this project. I'm always going to have new clients coming in. There's always going to be a tremendous need for this product or service. No one's ever going to compete with me to the point where I'm going to have to lower my prices or have trouble finding clients. So we all think that, I say we all, many people think that whatever they're doing will last forever. Oh, well, I have this pizza shop and, there's a line out the door and we're killing it. Well, what if somebody moves in next door that's cheaper and better?
Hmm.
That can go away tomorrow.
Yeah.
Or there can be a fire in the kitchen, or your head chef can quit and you don't know how to cook, or whatever the case may be. So I think you have to, yes, you want to go on the offensive and you want to grow, but you also have to play some defense and be a little paranoid. And I think that that's really important too.
Yeah, and also I think the word entrepreneur has become somewhat of a buzzword, right? I think all you need to do is turn to social media and everybody's an entrepreneur. Um, but
Well,
I think
let's take Shark Tank for instance, right?
right. Hmm.
So I think Shark Tank is a good example, right? So anyone can get on TV, anyone can be an entrepreneur, anyone can create a product. Well, first of all, there's millions of people at this point that have auditioned to be on that show. In some cases, multiple times that have not been able to,
Sure.
because they don't really have a product, or they're an aspiring entrepreneur, or they're bleeding so much money that they may not even be in business by the time they get to pitch the sharks or by the time the show airs,
Hmm.
right? So then you get on there and you find out, well, most of them are struggling. Very few go on there and they're killing it. They're
Right.
typically in there because they need connections, or they need better manufacturing, or they need capital or something else. Then you find out that I think it's 80% of those deals don't even go through, because once the Mark Cuban's team or Kevin O'Leary's team looks at their books and looks at the business, they go, this is not what you presented us on television.
Right.
This is a dumpster fire. You did not tell us that you have 8 credit cards maxed out, or you have a high interest loan with the bank that is due in a few months, or
Hmm.
whatever the case is.
Yeah.
So a lot of those don't go through. So, to your point, I think entrepreneurship, and I think there's value in this. I want everyone to think they can start a business. I want everyone to think entrepreneurially, or have a side gig, or be thinking about what they can do. I think that's really positive. But I also think that because of Shark Tank, because people only post the good stuff on social media,
Hmm.
it's been glorified. And people
Yeah.
think it's easier, people think it's less risky, and that's just not the case. And so we've created a lot of new entrepreneurs, but we've also created a lot more people that will fail because they don't realize how difficult it is, and they see it very, very glamorized. And,
Yeah.
and it's not. It's really, really tough. I mean, it's still tough, and it does, it's not as easy as it looks.
Yeah, my first guest on the show actually told me that she's never worked harder in her life, prior to becoming an entrepreneur. Like it's just go, 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 go. You're constantly thinking about a multitude of things and having to make decisions on almost a minute by minute basis.
James,
Um,
that's an interesting point, because I look at it, and I'm not unique in this. It's true of probably every guest you've had. We all work really, really hard,
mhm.
but to your other guest's point, I don't think it would be possible for me to work this hard if I had a job.
Right.
Because, I mean, someone, a boss or the owner of the company or someone would say, we don't work 7 days a week here. Or, you can't be getting involved in all those things. I mean, right,
Mm-hmm.
if all you have is something to do, well, there's a start day, there's an end date, you're told not to do things. Hey, we don't work here on weekends, or quit posting stuff on the Slack channel on the weekends because you're annoying the heck out of people. So
Right.
you really can't work as hard at a job as you can work as an entrepreneur. Because, and a lot of times too, there's no, and this is both a blessing and a curse, but there's no regulator. Like there's
Mm-hmm.
nothing there. The day is never over. I mean, yes, I have a list of things I want to do today, but if I get done with those, there's more things and there's more things. And,
Yeah.
you can create some really unhealthy habits with that. And I'm, look, right. And I'm so far from perfect on this stuff. I know I shouldn't work on the weekend, but I will. My kids will take a nap in the afternoon on Saturday and Sunday. And just
Mm-hmm.
based on some of the things I have going on, I will pull out the laptop and work, which means I'll work 7 days a week, this week. And that's not good. And you get burned out. But yeah, it's easy to work really, really hard. And you often have to or will work a lot harder. Now, the good thing is, that whatever hours and whatever time you're putting into it, you theoretically should be creating more wealth for yourself or more growth for the company, and advancing the ball down the field.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I saw, and excuse me if I'm misquoting this, but I saw a quote that said, entrepreneurs work 80 hours a week so they don't have to work 40 hours a week. Right. So it's, you almost front loading all the hard work so that, down the foreseeable future, you get yourself to a place where you don't necessarily have to put in all that time. You've kind of done all the work ahead of time. So,
And let me give you another quote and I really like that quote. I'll give you another one I really like, which is, entrepreneurs work their first 40 hours of the week to stay in business,
mhm,
and then the next however many hours to really grow the business.
right.
Now,
Yeah.
but if you think, oh, I'm an entrepreneur, so I don't have to work 40 hours anymore, maybe. I mean, but that's probably not the case.
Right.
So, you have to take that mindset of, hey, the first 40 are to make sure that we keep the lights on and I'm able to continue doing this and I'm able to provide for my family. But hey, if I can squeeze another 10 or 20 hours out of this week, what's possible? Is
Right.
it more clients? Is it retirement quicker? Is it being able to sell the business? Like, what does that mean to me? And then you have to figure out, is it worth it?
Yeah.
And that's a really tricky thing. And I don't think there's a right or wrong. I'm certainly not arrogant enough to state something as if it's fact. But there's a new thing online right now saying, and there's different versions of this, but oh, well, on your deathbed, you're never going to think about how many hours you worked, or your kids are never going to care how many hours you worked. And I think that sounds wonderful, and it's a terrific bumper sticker.
Hmm.
But the reality is that we all have to make an individual decision for ourselves,
Yeah.
because we may say, hey, if I work a little harder when my kids are young, I may be able to coach little league, and I may not have to be as stressed out then as I am now. So is it worth it to run myself into the ground 60, 70, 80 hours a week while they're young, so that I'm able to take them to Disney World and not be on my phone checking emails in a few years?
Yeah.
There is no right or wrong to this. But, and this is where I think some of the, and again, you talk about some of the negativity and some of the bad lessons that are out there for entrepreneurs. I think one of the worst things you can do as an entrepreneur is fall for absolutes and
Hmm.
fall for people saying things. Like, one of the examples I always give is sleep. So there are people out there that say, I sleep for 4 hours a night. Like I think Elon Musk says, I sleep for 4 hours a night, and sometimes it's in my office and I'm fine. It may work for him, but it
Right.
may not work for you. Or
Hmm.
it may not work for him, but he says it anyways, and he's running himself into the ground and he's going to drop dead of a heart attack. I mean, who knows? But we
Who knows?
can't
Yeah.
you can't put these people on a. I don't think it's good to put any one person on a pedestal. A motivational speaker, an entrepreneur, a politician, anyone, and then think that everything they say is gospel. And I think it's better to collect a whole bunch of information, listen to a whole bunch of perspectives, and then develop your own style and develop what works for you. But to
Yeah.
say don't work on weekends, well, maybe it's better for someone, or maybe someone's better saying. And this is the beauty of entrepreneurship: is we can create whatever we want, but most of us don't. And I'm even guilty of that too sometimes, where like I forget, hey, I can make this whatever I want. So someone may say, I want to work 7 days a week, but I want to be done at noon every day. Or
Hmm.
I may only want to work 4 days a week, but I'm going to work 12 hours on those days and not really see my family. There is no right or wrong to this stuff, but you have to figure out what works for you. You have to listen to your head. You have to listen to your heart. You have to listen to your body. You have to listen to some of the important people around you, and you develop the style that works best for you. But I'm fascinated by trying to determine what is optimal for me in terms
Hmm.
of work life balance, in terms of health, in terms of sleep. And it's a moving target, but I think we as entrepreneurs should all be cognizant of those things.
Just going back to your origin story, right? So following your initial foray into the world of entrepreneurship as a teenager, you've since started, and you're managing three successful companies. Can you maybe walk me through and give me a high level bird's eye view of what problems you're trying to solve and why those companies exist today?
Yeah, I'll give you kind of an aggregate of the three companies because
Hmm.
they're all in the learning and development arena. And
Okay.
so I tackle it from some different things. I mean, some of it's just my own intellectual property. So I get on stage and I speak, or I do consulting, or I do a workshop for CEOs. So, I have kind of my own stuff. I also have an online education company that provides coursework primarily to college campuses.
Hmm.
Mental health education, sexual violence prevention, drug and alcohol education, diversity, equity, and inclusion, first year college success, different topics inside of there. And then we have another company, Mentumm, that is providing one-on-one executive coaching inside of companies for key people. But everything I do is in that learning and development space, and I'm fascinated by how people learn. I'm
Hmm.
fascinated by what actually moves the needle. I look at learning and development as being worthless unless it changes people's behavior. Meaning, if I'm speaking or I'm giving an online program or I'm coaching someone one on one or one of our coaches is, to me, you measure success based on, did anything change? Like, is that person growing? Are they doing something differently? Are they eating a little healthier? Are they working out a little harder? Are they getting a little more sleep? Are they setting goals for themselves? Whatever it might be. But the point is, either we change our behavior and change our habits, or what we learned, what we read, what we listened to had no value. So if someone's listening to this podcast, listening to your podcast, they're either learning things that they can apply and will help them out or not. And based on the questions you're asking me, I don't know how you wouldn't learn at least something from every single person you're interviewing. Therefore, to me, what you're doing has tremendous value from a learning and development space. But
Hmm.
the opposite of that is something that has no value because it's very general and it's not, customized or personalized to the person, or it's not relevant to them. And so I'm just constantly looking for ways from my own business's standpoint, from an entrepreneurial standpoint, to do things that help people.
Right.
And I believe the only way to help people is if you can say or do something that will change their behavior, change their actions, change their habits for the better.
No, that makes complete sense. I remember teaching myself how to juggle three tennis balls when I was younger. And at that point, once I had mastered that, I tried to do it with five, but I quickly gave up because, sort of the hand-eye coordination just kept managing to elude me. So I'm curious, and I think you kind of pointed to this earlier, but I'm curious, with everything that you are currently juggling and everything that you have on your plate, how do you go about staying organized and keeping it all together? Because it does become, you can get to a point where it's really easy to drop that proverbial ball. How do you manage all this?
It's a great question, and I've worked very hard at this. My system is not perfect, but I have worked very hard at this. I've read a number of things. I've studied what some people do. A number of years back, I hired a consultant to spend a day with me, just helping me get more organized. And a
Mm-hmm.
lot of what he helped me implement, I still do to this day. But yeah, a couple things. I don't separate personal from professional. So my calendar
Okay.
is my calendar, my to-do list is my to-do list. Now, I have categories, so business one, business two, personal, some different community involvement that I have. So I have, color coded categories and different lists, but I just view everything in totality.
Mm.
Meaning, here are all the things I have to do. Here's where I have to be. I keep a calendar. I'm fanatical about that calendar. So if my wife says, "Hey, our kid has a birthday party at 11 o'clock on Saturday," I'm putting that time, I'm blocking it off. It's color coded as a personal activity. The evite or any instructions are there. Everything is right there. So, I try to, again, anything that I have to do, anywhere I have to be, being on this interview, whatever it is, it's on my calendar, it's color coded, it's available on every device. The other thing I do is I have a list of projects. So current front burner stuff that's on the back burner that I'd like to get to, later in the year, stuff that's just an idea that may or may not ever happen. Also, any
Mm-hmm.
recurring things are all tasked. I mean, and that's everything. I got to take out the garbage on Monday nights. I have to pay the mortgage at the end of the month. I mean, everything I do is on there. It's either a recurring reminder or it's a one-off thing. So, and then the other thing I do is, and I've been doing this. Funny story. I've been doing this since college, and back in college, it was on a note card. So every day I have a list of what I have to do. Meaning, here are all the places I have to be, and here are all the tasks I have to do. Now it's a note on my iPhone, right? But every day I have that. So when I wake up, I get up at 4 o'clock every morning to work out. But 4 o'clock, work out what I need to do, then anything I need to do while I'm working out. So read this article or do this, then all the meetings I have for the day, and then any other tasks I have to do throughout the day that I have to get done. But I started doing that in college and putting it on a note card. And I laugh because I had buddies of mine that they made fun of me. They're like, "Oh, Healy has a stupid note card. Ha ha ha. Like, you dork." And James, what do you think they started doing? One by one, junior year, senior year. Hey Tom, can you teach me the note card thing? Can you show me what you? They all wanted me
Yeah.
to teach them how to do it because they were like, "Oh, okay, now I need to get an internship. I need to find a job. I need to get my stuff together." So they all wanted that. But that's a habit that I used to walk around with a note card in my pocket Monday through Friday, and now it's on my phone. But yeah, so those are some things that I do. But I try to be as organized and efficient as I can. It's a little bit of an obsession. If I'm wasting time, I get very, very uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Waiting in traffic, waiting for someone to have a meeting, whatever it might be. I mean, and if I can, I do something while I'm waiting, but I like making every minute count. And I think that's important as an entrepreneur. It's like, okay, well, I want to grow my business, but I don't want to work 7 days a week, 24/7. Okay. Well, let me tell you how to do that. Be
Mm-hmm.
efficient as hell.
Yeah.
Like if
Yeah.
you could, if you don't have to work 80 hours a week. I mean, yes, you may need to work more than 40, but like, think about like we all know this, right? We all know when we're productive and not. There are days that I don't get much done. I'm either tired or I just got back from traveling or I have a personal distraction or I'm stressed out or whatever. Okay. We all have bad days, but we also know what a really good day feels like. And if you can have more good days than bad days, if you can get a lot done. So like I view work as a sprint. Like go, 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 get as much done as you can. Don't waste your time on stupid things. Be efficient. And if you're able to do that, you can get 80 hours of work done in 40 hours.
Mm-hmm.
There's no question about that. So a lot of people just aren't efficient, whether it's they're not organized or they have no relationship to technology. And so they go, "Oh, I'm so burned out." Well, it's your own damn fault because you're not efficient. you waste time, you screw around on your email too much, you don't have an organized to-do list, you don't prioritize things, you don't keep an efficient calendar, you don't say no to things, you say yes to everything. So you did this to yourself.
Yeah.
So it's not that being an entrepreneur isn't for you, or it's too hard for you, or you don't have time. It's just that it's all on you to do that. But you have to create all that for yourself because no one else will.
Yeah.
No one's sitting here telling me, okay, well, you have to be here at this time, or you don't need to do this, or you can kick this to legal or whatever else. I mean, you have to do all this yourself. So it takes an incredible amount of discipline. But
Yeah.
if you do that, then, hey, how do I get a whole bunch of stuff done Monday to Friday so I can relax on the weekend? Or how can I leave at 4:30 for my office every day, go pick my kids up from school, and not feel like, oh, I needed another 2 hours of work to feel like I had a good day?
Yeah, no, I love that because I think to your point that obsession with being organized is almost a natural guardrail to burnout, right? Because you find yourself staying on course, you're not veering off to the side and becoming overwhelmed with your to-do list, right? So I totally love that. And it's something that I learned a little later in life, right? But definitely a good habit to have, and just being organized um, and being deliberate about sticking to whatever it is that's on your calendar.
Well, and just one more point I want to make on this. So, like, and this is where I get really frustrated when companies say to me, "Oh, well, our people are really burned out right now," and
Mhm.
then like you peel back the onion a little bit, and it's like, well, you expect them to be on Slack 7 days a week. You have a culture where emails need to be responded to. Well, where does someone's phone sit? It sits on their nightstand next to where they sleep. So tell me how someone can unwind, get a good night's sleep, be able to disengage when their phone's going off from emails and Slack at all hours. And I know it's not making noise, but it's just like that device that never leaves your side is
Mhm.
stressing you out because you've created that culture. So people, some of us entrepreneurs, do it to ourselves, but companies also do it to their employees.
Right, right. What's the one thing that you're working on right now that you're most excited about?
Yeah, we have a product called Mentumm, Mentumm,
Hmm.
and Mentumm sells executive coaching into companies at a lower level than executive coaching typically exists.
Okay.
So let's just take a company with 100 employees. Their CEO has an executive coach, maybe a couple key people in the C suite have an executive coach, and that's it. That's the extent of coaching inside the company.
Okay.
Well, we're providing coaching to more people, and we're providing it to all those emerging leaders, high potentials, managers, supervisors, site managers, retail managers, people that are leading other people basically.
Hmm.
And we're giving them incredible executive coaching at a very reasonable cost. And it's completely disrupting learning and development because most of the time and money spent on L&D is completely wasted
Sure.
because it's generalized and it treats employees like they're 12-year-old children. Therefore, the employee does not engage or care, and then their behavior doesn't change, and so there's no ROI to the L&D. So we're really disrupting the L&D space inside of companies, and it's something I'm really proud of. It's having a tremendous impact, and that's I'm trying to scale and grow that. You have to educate people on why L&D is broke. You have to educate them on the lack of engagement that they have inside their company. You have to engage. You have to educate them on why a one-on-one personalized approach is going to extract the most value out of that person, not
Hmm.
generalized, cookie cutter L&D. So there's a lot of education that goes on, and that's candidly that's why I'm doing a lot of podcasts right now, is to as I like to say, tell the story.
Yeah.
So I'm out here telling the story of what we're doing. Obviously I'm an open book. So, my life as an entrepreneur, anything I've learned, how I feel about learning and development, how I feel about entrepreneurship. But I'm just trying to tell my story to as many people as possible so that, obviously there's opportunities for us to grow our business.
Yeah.
And I just feel like this is a tremendous medium to be able to do that.
You mentioned podcasts as being one of the mediums or channels that you're using to, um, you know, broaden the exposure of your company. What other tools or channels are you using for client acquisition? How are you getting your value proposition in front of clients?
That's a great question, and it's changed a lot. So, I've been doing business development in one way or another for my 17-year professional career. Not that long ago, okay, and 4 years ago, okay, you could send out emails to people you didn't know,
Hmm.
and a certain percentage would respond and meet with you. Again, assuming it was for a reasonable reason and there was a need for what you do. But sending an email to someone saying, "Hey, I know I'm reaching out of the blue, but we provide executive coaching inside your organization. I'd love to buy you a cup of coffee." 4 years ago, that worked,
Hmm.
meaning people would sit down and have a cup of coffee with me, and maybe I'd make the sale, maybe I wouldn't. Same thing with LinkedIn. Hey, Bob, reaching out of the blue. Really interesting what you guys do. Love to buy you a cup of coffee and talk to you about how engaged your employees are and maybe some ways we could help you with that through one-on-one coaching.
Yeah.
And if you were just a reasonable professional that had a very clear message and was very honest about what you were trying to do, people would meet with you. So I say all that to say none of that works anymore.
Hmm.
It just doesn't work.
Yeah.
Maybe if you send out 1,000 emails, one person will write you back. But it's like completely, and that's because COVID had everyone doing that. So now there's a zillion Facebook or LinkedIn messages. There's a zillion emails. You just can't get through that way. So that to me is the biggest way business development has changed. Is if you're a nice person that has a good product or service, and you reach out to someone asking for a little bit of their time and attention, you no longer can get it.
Yeah.
So I say all that to say, from a business development standpoint, the biggest word I'm going to use to tell you what I'm doing now is warm. Meaning, I want to have a warm introduction to
Hmm.
someone, or I want someone to hear me on a podcast and go, wow, I want to connect with that dude. Let me look him up on LinkedIn and grab a virtual cup of coffee with him. So it's either their idea because they hear you speaking or hear you on a podcast or read your book, or you were introduced to them by someone that knows them saying, hey, Mary, Tom's a friend of mine. You're a friend of mine. Based on what I know about your company, I think that you two should connect. So
Yeah.
those warm introductions. So that's what I'm really driving, and I'm doing a lot of that locally here in Arizona. I'm doing podcasts. I used to do over 100 nights of business travel. I spoke every day. That was my life. I never will go back to that.
Hmm.
But a handful of very solid speaking arrangements in front of the right people is absolutely something I'm doing now as well. I just a few days ago spoke at an insurance conference in California, my business partner and it was great. And people saw value in it because we provided an hour of value
Hmm.
and they want to talk to you. And so very, very warm, very, very friendly. That's what I'm trying to do. And I, you know, that's what I encourage a lot of entrepreneurs to do, especially those of us that haven't raised millions of dollars. Because if you say, oh, well, we raised $10 million, well, great, go run a bunch of Facebook ads and, go do digital media and do all that stuff. And that's great. But, I don't have the resources to do that at the scale I would need to do it for it to provide meaningful leads in return.
Yeah.
So very organic, warm is where I'm focused.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of power in the in what you just said in terms of getting those warm introductions. Let's call them maybe even referrals. I think it also speaks to the old marketing adage, right? That you have to get your clients or customers to know, like, and trust you, right? And being able to do that is difficult, right? It's not necessarily easy, but I also personally think it starts with understanding who you want to get in front of, who's that ideal customer, right? So we talk about the client or customer avatars. So there's a lot to be said about social proof and referrals. So I really like that. Um, what do you dislike most about being a business owner, or being in business for yourself right now?
Great question. I'll give you two answers.
Hmm.
Traditionally, when I was doing a lot of things by myself, I found it to be completely lonely and isolating. I spent my 20s being the business, meaning I went out, I spoke, I consulted, I did whatever. And I didn't realize it at the time, but I was very lonely and I was very isolated. Um, I don't know if I'd use the word depressed because I don't want to loosely use that word.
Hmm.
Um, but it was those types of feelings,
Sure.
and you just feel by yourself. And then on top of that, you screw something up and a client chews you out and lays into you, and you feel like a worthless idiot. So it was really tough, and I think many entrepreneurs, maybe not because of the travel, but they feel very lonely and isolated. And
Hmm.
that's why you have to have other peers that you can work with. So joining a peer group, joining a mastermind, having other people in your industry, I think is absolutely critical. Having that support system of entrepreneurs, of people that get what you're going through, I think is absolutely critical. And that really helped me. And that's something that I started doing probably in my mid to late 20s was being a part of organizations like that. So that's a really tough thing. I'd say now, as I sit here today, and I've talked to other people that have experienced this as well, so I don't think this is unique to me, but I will share with you that I think COVID made some people a little nasty.
Hmm.
And what I mean by that is, I don't think people in business are as nice now as they were 4 or 5 years ago.
What do you mean by that?
Um, I think, part of it is you can't, you used to be able to reach out to someone and ask them to buy you a cup of coffee and they would.
Hmm.
Not all the time, but I mean, if you said, hey, I'd love to get that, no longer works. So, and what happens is, you get a nasty response or they delete it. I mean, I've reached out to people that I spoke to and met with on a pretty regular basis pre-COVID that I've reached out to a few times since, and they won't respond.
Hmm.
And nothing's changed with me. It's just that's the culture of business now, is people delete a lot of things, they ignore a lot of things, they are a little combative. And I'm not saying I'm not guilty of it sometimes too. I mean, I respond with smart ass things to people on LinkedIn sometimes too, because I'm just so annoyed with it. So I get it. It's not that I'm better than anyone or different than anyone. It's more of a commentary of business in general. And so that's why it's like, and it's easier said than done, but it's like, I only want to talk to people that want to talk to me. Like you and I wanted to have this conversation today. It's a great conversation. We could sit here all day and do this. We could
Hmm.
get together socially and probably have a really nice time. And we just met. So I all I want to do is I want to be around people that want to be around me.
Yeah.
And so whether it's a warm introduction, or it's someone that seeked me out, or it's someone that I seeked out but is excited to talk to me, I just want to have those conversations, because I feel like a lot of people are, I use the word nasty, but nasty, abrasive, short tempered, whatever you want to use. And I think, and I don't have a definitive theory on this, but it's probably a convergence of a number of different things. I think the cold outreach in business has annoyed a lot of people.
Yeah.
I think COVID caused a lot of people to kind of hunker down and not want to talk to people and not be social. I think that people are more polarized and combative politically than they've been. I think social media encourages a lot of that discourse. So for a lot of reasons, it just feels like people kind of don't like each other as much as they used to, and I it makes me sad. I think it's horrible because I pride myself on being someone that can get along with anyone, that feels comfortable in any environment, that can relate to people, that understands different people's perspective, even if it may not be how I feel. And I feel like that empathy and that kindness is continuing to go away. And it's not just in business, it's in society. But from a business standpoint, I absolutely feel it and see it, and I hate it. It really disappoints me.
Yeah. So I'll share a quick anecdote that's actually just happened. That's been happening recently. So once I set up my profile on Matchmaker, which is the platform that we met on, a lot of people reached out asking to be on the show. But when I relayed to them, I said, listen, I'd love to have you on the show, but I do have to tell you that I'm just getting started, right? I don't necessarily have an audience, but I do have a plan to build an audience. And it was just interesting to see how many people just went quiet after that. And obviously, folks like yourself who were super gracious and said, "Hey, listen, everybody starts somewhere, so would love to be on the show." But I think that speaks to people's motivations, right? Like people have their own reasons, and I'm not faulting anyone for you know going quiet, but it's just an interesting um, dynamic to see what happens once you kind of even just leading with being honest with people and saying, "Hey, listen, this is where I'm at. I don't have an audience," but I thought that was a very interesting um, observation that I made, just in terms of who was willing to actually come onto the show and what their motivations were. So
I mean,
I totally get what you're saying.
how difficult is it for you to give an hour of your time to someone else on a video chat? It's just not that difficult. I mean, I'm busy. We're all busy, but a nice person wants to have a conversation with you. It may not go anywhere. It may go somewhere. We may stay in contact and something may emerge from it. Somebody may listen to this that wants to talk to me. I mean, who knows?
Yeah,
But it's not, to me, it's easier to just be kind and spend time with somebody. I just don't understand that. And I think a lot of people just take themselves too damn seriously. And you see it on LinkedIn every day. It's like, who we're all just people. Like, don't take yourself so damn seriously. And it's, I'm all for being efficient and managing my time, and I get all of that. Trust
yeah,
me, I'm obsessed with it. But at the same time, like it's not difficult to give people a little bit of your time and to meet new interesting people. And that's part of, I think, my frustration is that people are so hunkered down that I'm sure some people haven't met anyone new in a few years,
hmm
which that's not good.
yeah, yeah. And the universe has a way of the kindness that you're referring to. I think the universe has a way of rewarding that, right? So it may not be, a month from now, a day from now, but there's always a way to balance these things out. So again, like I mentioned, I definitely don't take offense to it. I get it. Everyone's motivations are different. But if I could switch gears a little bit, you're an execution specialist in that you teach business owners how to drive execution faster and more efficiently. I have a little. I don't know if you can see it, but I have a little piece of wall art here, and it says, "Ideas mean nothing without execution." And I believe this is a Gary Vaynerchuk quote. And his quote actually says, "Ideas are worthless without the execution. Execution is pointless without the ideas." So there's an implication here that a symbiotic relationship exists between, let's call it, ideation and execution. I'd love to hear your thoughts, um, on this presupposition within sort of the context of entrepreneurship.
Well, yeah, yes, I completely agree with those quotes. And
Hmm
actually, I just made myself a note because that might be a good quote to put on our website, because our entire business is based on the idea that most companies are good in the ideation stuff.
hmm
Hey, we've got some really good ideas. We've got a good strategy. We know what market we're going after. And I'm talking established companies. I'm not talking
Sure.
like, new entrepreneurs. But most companies, they've got that figured out. The issue is execution. It's okay, we figured all this out at the annual retreat at the log cabin in the woods, but now we have 75 employees and we need them to execute. And often it doesn't happen
Hmm.
because their learning and development's terrible. They haven't set their people up for success. They don't have a coaching culture. They don't measure performance. Their people aren't engaged, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But at the end of the day, for whatever reason, execution is not occurring. So it's a major problem. Um, yeah, the other thing too is you have, and we've kind of talked a little bit about this, but you have a lot of dreamers out there.
Hmm.
Meaning, I want to be an entrepreneur and I want to be on Shark Tank and I want to sit in Starbucks and work for myself all day. And that stuff all sounds great. But I will tell you, I've talked to and been around thousands of entrepreneurs. I still have yet to see a successful one that did not hustle,
Right.
that did not make significant sacrifices, that did not work incredibly, incredibly hard. So if you're trying to build something, it's really tough. I
Yeah.
mean, I still, James, I still have to remind myself of that. This Mentumm platform that I'm describing, this coaching platform, we only came up with the idea for it a year ago.
Wow.
And if I told you where we were from a customer standpoint, a revenue standpoint, you'd go, "Wow, that's pretty good." But it's been really hard.
Yeah.
And it continues to be hard. And we still have a lot of hard work ahead of us. And I still have to remind myself, oh yeah, this stuff is really, really hard. And just because, you know, if you've been an entrepreneur for a while, it doesn't get easier. There's a few mistakes that you know not to make. There's a few things that you avoid so you don't step in them. You are a little smarter, but you still have to do the hard work. And one of the hardest things is that it's often called product market fit. But you alluded to it earlier.
Yeah.
But it's like, who is my target customer? And it's not everyone, and it's not entrepreneurs, and it's not entrepreneurs of a certain size. I mean, it's like you got to keep going, and you only figure that out through conversations, trial and error, and it just takes time. But like that's just the customer equation of it. Then it's like, how do I speak to that customer? What are their goals and dreams? What are their aspirations? What do they want to accomplish? And then how do I wordsmith that in a way that on a website in one sentence or phrase I can convey that to them? And then how do I price this? And we can go on and on and on. But the point is that takes an incredible amount of hard work that even if you've been around the block a few times, you still have to do. It's not an easy game.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And this resonates with me because, I'll be the first to tell you that I am the king of ideas, but in the same breath, I'll also tell you that I am the king of not executing on those ideas, right? Which is, it can be embarrassing to admit that. And I think it's a common place that people find themselves. For me personally, I find I get into my own way with sort of analysis paralysis, right? I'm always overthinking things and trying to get things absolutely perfect before moving forward. Um, but until you realize that sometimes you just have to fail fast and fail forward, start messy, and figure things out as you go along, iron the kinks out as you move forward. Um, I think sometimes that's a huge hindrance for people, right? Like we're in our own way. So what you're saying
Let me
about.
tell you let me tell you a really quick story. Have you watched the movie or read the book Moneyball?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so it tells the story of Billy Beane, who is the general manager of the Oakland A's. They had no money to spend, yet they were competitive, and he tells his whole story. And it's great. It's great from a business standpoint. It's great. It's just a fantastic book and a fantastic story. But Billy Beane, who went on to lead the Oakland A's as the general manager, was a minor league baseball player,
Hmm.
and he never was able to become a star in the major leagues. And he tells the story of how a guy he was coming up with was, and he basically was like, this guy was dumb as rocks, and all he did was see the baseball and hit the baseball. He wasn't thinking about what inning it was, what the count was, what the weather was. He
Hmm.
didn't. He just got up and just hit the damn ball. He made it into the major leagues. I, the one that was studying, what was this guy going to pitch and what was he going to do, and I had all this stuff going through my head. I couldn't make it to the major leagues. And the moral of the story is sometimes it's better to be see ball, hit ball, and not overthink this stuff.
Yeah.
Meaning it's okay to be a little bit of an idiot that isn't, thinking about all this stuff, because you can kill yourself as an entrepreneur if it's like, well, what do I say in this situation, and why didn't I get that deal, and hey, what do I need to put on my web? I mean, at some point you just have to go, okay, I'm just going to have 50 conversations about my business and see what the hell happens. And if somebody says no to me, I don't care. And if someone walks out on a meeting, whatever. You just kind of have to thick skin, not care that much. See ball, hit ball. And so sometimes you can be too smart for your own good. You can think too much for your own good. You can get in your head, because if you take everything personally and if you overanalyze everything, it can make you feel horrible. So some of it has to be, I don't really care that much, and I'm just going to go out and tell my story, and people want to work with me, great, and if they don't, they don't, and I'll listen to customer feedback and I'll make my product better. And I think some of that is you have to be a little stupid, a little thick-skinned, a little see ball, hit ball, to be an entrepreneur, at least in my experience.
Again, in the context of entrepreneurship, is there such a thing as an execution framework or maybe a general methodology that anyone can apply to, let's say, whatever's in front of them? If they have a project or there's a business that they're looking to start, or maybe a better question is, what execution framework do you use within your company, to help your clients?
Yeah, I mean, I think if I'm trying to start a business, or I'm trying to work on a big project, and I'm not gonna blow you away with this answer, but I also think there's beauty in simplicity.
Sure.
I like making a step-by-step list of everything that needs to happen, put it all into order chronologically, and then start doing it. So, big picture, here's what I want. I want to write a book. Okay, well, I want this book to be on Amazon. I want to have the audio version and the Kindle version and the paperback version. Great. But what happens? Most people go, oh my goodness, writing a book, it takes so long and it's so difficult, and they never do it. And
Hmm.
and because it's paralysis.
Yeah.
Meaning, if something feels too big, it paralyzes you, it suffocates you, and you don't do it. So, what you need to do some research, talk to some people, and you need to say, okay, what are the steps to writing a book? And it may be that there's 120 steps, but you now know what it is. And you now start working on number one. And when you cross off number one, psychologically, you feel a boost of enthusiasm, and
Yeah.
you now have momentum. So you're now and guess what? As an entrepreneur, you better create momentum for yourself, because no one else is going to do it. Okay. No one says, oh, great job, and pats you on the back. Okay. You have to create that for yourself. So you have to be a little nuts, because you have to pat yourself on the back. You have to look yourself in the mirror and say that you're proud of yourself. And I have to. I mean, I have to tell myself that stuff, because if not, who will?
Yeah.
So you have to create that. You have to say, okay, step one done, step two done. So I've always tried, even if it's something as big as writing and publishing a book or starting a podcast, whatever. Make a list, and just start tackling it, and then you build some momentum with it, and it becomes possible. And it's like the old adage of, how do you eat an elephant? Well, you do it one bite at a time. And most people never try, but if you do it one bite at a time, eventually you eat the damn elephant. And I
Yeah.
think that that's what we need to do, whether it's starting a business or a big project or anything else. But people never take the time to make that list, and they never start working on that list. Therefore, they get paralyzed and it never happens.
Yeah, no, that makes complete sense. And it's something that I've also employed myself, and in terms of this podcast, right? So one of the things that I did force myself to do was purchase all the equipment, because I was trying to get myself to a place where I could say I am beyond the point of no return, right? That I've made the investment. I've spoken to people, I've purchased courses on how to publish videos on YouTube and all these different things. And for me, that was just, it was an incentive to say, hey, you can't let all this go to waste, right? You've made it this far. Let's keep going. What's that next stage, and what can you cross off that list and say, hey, I've done this, I've done that, and what's the next step after that? So I
Yeah.
totally agree on the idea of making lists and crossing things off as you go along. So it makes
Well, and
complete
you made a
sense.
great point of like getting to the point of no return. It's interesting. I said to myself, this was like 7 years ago. I said to myself, okay, I'm going to start traveling less,
Hmm.
and then I'm going to spend that time facilitating groups of entrepreneurs here locally in Arizona, and I'm going to replace my speaking income of traveling around the country with doing facilitated monthly meetings locally. But to do that, I was like, well, I need a professional place to meet and I need this and that. So the office I'm sitting in today, about 6 or 7 years ago, I walked in to this building and it had meeting rooms, it had an AV studio, it had everything I needed to do the things I said I was going to do:
Hmm.
online education, in person meetings. And um, this corner office was available. And I said, how much is it? And, I don't even remember what it was at the time, but I said, F it. Just give me the paperwork. I'm going to sign it right now.
Yeah.
And it was not an insignificant amount of money, and it was like a 12-month commitment. But I'm like, I have to do this now.
Yeah.
What am I going to do? Come in here and go, oh, there's an AV studio, but I'm not going to build online content. And hey, there's a meeting room right out there that's a beautiful place for 12 to 15 people to meet, but I'm not going to host meetings in there. Forced me to do it.
Yeah.
So you have to do that stuff. But if that microphone was sitting, uh, next to the couch where you're sitting watching TV, I mean, you could not do the podcast, but you'd feel really guilty about it. You'd feel pretty stupid about it.
Yeah.
And if someone walked into your place and said, "What's that?" you'd be embarrassed to say, "Oh, well, I bought it 6 months ago, but I still haven't started a podcast yet." So it's that forced accountability.
Exactly.
But we have to do it to ourselves because
Hmm.
no one, you mentioned to a friend, "Hey, I'm thinking about starting a podcast." They're not going to sit there every day and go, "Did you start it yet? Did you
Yeah.
start it yet? Did you come
Yeah.
up with a name? Did you design a logo?" They're not going to do that because they're not your coach and they don't care that much and they got their own, what to deal
Yeah.
with.
Yeah. No, it's a great accountability tool, right? And I think also just forcing yourself to learn, right? Like there's a lot of different things that I have had to, learn. Things like video editing, audio editing, and these types of things. So investing all that time and those resources, to your point, you don't want to look back and be like, man, I feel so dumb for not moving forward with this. I have all this wasted time and wasted resources and nothing to show for it, right? So definitely a great self accountability tool. um, Tom, as we get close to wrapping up here, there's a lot of other questions I actually didn't get a chance to ask you, but
Well, then we'll have to do this again sometime.
yeah, maybe we can have a part two to this. I'd certainly love that. So I know you sit on a number of different boards for different companies, and so wearing your board hat, we all know that boards are there to be advisory soundboards and help guide the strategic direction of a company, execution, etc. So wearing your board member hat, is there any advice you can impart on someone who's thinking about starting their own business or struggling to manage a business that they currently have?
I think above all else, and it's a simple answer, but whether you're talking a board or a business or any organization, you need really, really strong leadership.
Yes.
And there's obviously a lot that goes into that, but making decisions, making quick decisions, making the right decisions, picking a lane and going there. But I've been involved in different organizations. I've advised companies. I've sat on boards. I mean, it's you you can make the wrong decisions as long as you're having strong leadership, quickly learning, quickly changing course. Like, you can make fatal decisions incorrectly, but as long as you have strong leadership that can learn and quickly change course and doesn't have an ego and doesn't make assumptions and listens to people and listens to customers and listens to employees, you're cool. It's the people that are weak leaders, that are extremely arrogant, that think they know everything, that are too stubborn to quickly change, that get left in the dust and fail. And it goes back to that see ball, hit ball. It's like, just you think, a lot of the lousy entrepreneurs I know out there are extremely arrogant, and maybe not outwardly arrogant, but they just think they're smarter than they are. James, I swear to you, I kind of think I'm an idiot. Okay. Like, I don't assume I know everything. Hopefully I don't come across like I know everything. I mean, I'm happy to share my experiences, my perspective, my thoughts, but I don't come from a place of these being facts or that I know everything. They're just my perspective. But I mean, I try to learn from people. I assume I don't know things. I mean, everything we're doing right now in our, current Mentumm business that I've been mentioning, I have no arrogance. I have no assumptions. I'm just going with the flow. I'm listening. I'm paying attention. I'm studying. I'm asking people questions. I'm asking for feedback. And I think that's what the best leaders and the best boards and the best entrepreneurs do, is they move very, very quickly. They break things. They try new things, but there's no arrogance. There's no assumptions. They don't move slow. They don't, they're not so stubborn that they try keep doing something. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, no, that's great. So to close things out, what's the one word that would describe where you're going to be in the next 3 to 5 years?
Wow, that's a great question. I hope that the answer to that is control.
Okay.
And being an entrepreneur means that you often don't have a lot of control, which is ironic because you think that by being an entrepreneur, you have complete control. Mm-hmm. You're the boss. You control everything. You run everything. I control nothing. Yeah. I have to listen to my family. I have to listen to my clients. I have to listen to prospects. I have to listen to business partners. I have to listen to employees and independent contractors. And there are a lot of moving pieces. And as I sit here today, I have some control, but there's also a lot of chaos. Mm-hmm. And I feel the more control I have, the more predictable things are, the more, in control that I am of the situation. That to me lowers my stress and increases my happiness. So I hope that in a few years, I feel a little bit more in control. Mm-hmm. I'll still be working hard. I'll still be, trying to grow and scale and learn and all that fun stuff. But I do hope that I continue to have a little bit more control over what we're doing, over what we know, over where we're going. And that just takes a lot of time and a lot of hard work.
Tom, I can't thank you enough for joining me today. This has been such an insightful conversation. For anyone listening who might want to contact you, can you maybe just shout out where they can find you?
Yeah, best place is LinkedIn. So Tom Healy, Healy. I'm in Scottsdale, Arizona. So if there's multiples, that's the one. And I say that because, all my contact information is there. Send me a direct message if there's anything I can do to be of value to you. I post a lot of content that I think is interesting to the people that will be listening to this. So yeah, that's just a great place to find me, Tom Healy on LinkedIn, and love to connect with you. And if I can be a resource at any point, don't hesitate to let me know.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much for your time, sir. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. This was a lot of fun, and I look forward to staying in touch with you and listening to your podcast, and hopefully we can do this again at some point.
No, that'd be great. Thanks, Tom.
All right.
Cheers.
Thank you.